November 1972. Nobody move! Nobody move! A plane bound for Mexico City is being hijacked. Terrorists make their way to the front of the aisle, waving guns in the air as they break into the cockpit. Passengers cower, face down against their meal trays. Except for this guy. This, he thinks to himself, smiling, this is too good to be true. This episode was made possible by Babbel. Let's say you've gotten your vaccine and you're rearing to travel again. Let's say you have a passion for learning. Let's say you're stuck on a raft for 3 months with people from 10 different countries on a mission to foster a greater understanding of the global community. Pour moi, je veux rafraîchir mon français. Bonsoir. Où est la bibliothèque? Mon aéroglisseur est plein d'anguilles. Whatever your reason, learning a new language is a fantastic skill that exercises your noggin, and Babbel is the #1 tool for the job. This is important, so I'm saying it in English. University studies have shown that 15 hours on Babbel equals 1 semester of college classes. They gave me 6 months free. I want to get them back on the channel in that time, so reply under the pinned comment which one of these languages you want to see me speaking. Whichever one gets the most likes, I'll be learning for next time they sponsor me, and we can put them to the test together. Consider yourself invited to follow along. There's a special offer in the description where you can get up to 65% off your subscription. Thanks again to Babbel for their support of the channel. Santiago Genoves is an anthropologist at the largest university in Latin America, and on this fateful day in '72, he's literally just on his way back from a conference on theories of human violence. Seeing real danger up close and personal, this is just fascinating. As soon as he can, he's furiously taking notes. Oh, how he wished the hijacking would never end. When alas, he's eventually set free, he thinks to himself, if only there was a way to replicate that scenario and study it. Well, Santiago is not only an anthropologist, he is a man with a very particular set of skills. Previously, he had worked with a man named Thor Heyerdahl, who is famous for arguing that Polynesians could never have figured out how to sail across the Pacific because white people hadn't taught them yet. It must have been South Americans getting lost and drifting ashore by accident, and he would, quote, prove it by himself drifting on a raft across the ocean. And then in 1969, he began a new experiment in which he built an ancient Egyptian raft and sailed it across the ocean. And for the sake of sending a good message, he invited a crew from around the world to show that we could all get along, including one Santiago Genoves. So Santiago thinks to himself, what if you could discover the root cause of human violence and scientifically demonstrate the principles leading to world peace by building a raft and sailing it across the ocean? It may seem crazy, but this was the 70s. All you needed to achieve fame in psychology was grab a bunch of college students and ask, dude, what would happen if we put them in a prison and made them fight each other? The plan was simple. Santiago had found that certain male apes would use violence to claim ovulating females. Therefore, humans, same thing. I mean, you'd kind of have to assume that violence is unique to straight guys, or else ignore the existence of women, gay men, and most non-binary folks, but it's the 70s, that shouldn't be too hard. To prove his hypothesis, he would assemble from across the globe and without a common language a group of 20-somethings that he found personally attractive, and stick them on a raft for 3 months, which meant that objectively they would all try to bang. And when they all wanted to get down with each other, the 4 men would have to compete over the 6 women. Wait, hang on a second. Well, the point is, it would be really sexy, and they would all get pent up and awkward around each other, and then if anybody did the deed, he made sure there was a priest on board so they'd feel super guilty about it, and that would bubble over into violence. Santiago placed ads in a bunch of international newspapers, and finally, he assembles his crew of raftees at the Canary Islands. Among these poor unfortunate souls was Maria, the first woman from Sweden to graduate with a professional sea captain's degree. Santiago had specifically gone searching for a female captain, not because feminism, but because he wanted to make the men on board feel emasculated by taking orders from a woman. Listen, I'm sorry, it's just science. Taking orders from a licensed captain makes you a cuck. She arrives and is a little concerned with the raft's condition. It has no motor, a pitiful sail, hardly any ability to steer. It just kind of floats according to the wind and the currents. Santiago tells her, I know it's dangerous, but don't worry. I don't think the crew has realized it yet. Oh, and did I mention literally no one besides the captain had any sailing experience? Also on board, a photographer named Eske, who joined the boat thinking he'd be documenting the experiment, not participating in it, and a woman named Mary who was escaping an abusive partner who'd nearly killed her, only to find herself on a raft where the researcher intended to light a powder keg of constant stress and danger with sex-fueled violence. Aside from those few highlights, Santiago also did his best to make sure everyone had some desperate reason to get back home if things got hairy. I.e., lots of people married with kids, that way maybe they'd have a reason to turn on each other at the last minute. You should have seen the job interview he put them through just to get on the boat. It started off pretty normal with questions like, "So, how do you handle conflict? What if someone confronted you about an issue on the raft?" And then quickly devolved into, "Would you kill one of your fellow crewmates?
What? No!
What would drive you to kill somebody? What might push you over the precipice into the dark abyss of the human psyche, that raw animalistic furor we try so hard to suppress?" They hadn't even made it out of the harbor before Captain Maria's boyfriend tried to put the kibosh on the whole thing. "Hey! Hey! Oh, thank God. Babe, have you actually read this contract?
Why? What's in it?
You basically gave all your rights away to Santiago. Like, all of them."
Well, in for a penny, in for a pound, I guess.
The first few days went by without incident. The volunteers all tended to their duties on board, and they started to open up to their new family. The only odd part of their routine was Santiago passing out his daily questionnaire, trying to gauge everyone's private thoughts. Stuff like, who do you feel closest to? Who annoys you the most? If you could get rid of one of the others, who would it be? And how do you like my raft? It's pretty good, huh? And then, as the days go by, and the coastline fades away, and the birds in the sky disappear, and the only thing for miles around is the yawning chasm of the sea, everyone's just having a good time. The lack of privacy was a bummer, but the raft floats along all on its own, so everybody takes the time to relax with a nice book and enjoy the fresh sea breeze over the summer air. So Santiago takes away all the books. They're banned. They're ruining the experiment. No more books. And now he waits for every fleeting touch, every sensual glance to build until the crew is taken by a crescendo of uncontrollable lust. They're singing songs. They're playing games and laughing and singing songs. Santiago eventually has to confront one of the girls on board while she's alone and ask her, "Would you be willing to have sex with..."
No,
Not with me. With the other men on the boat. Please?"
no.
He starts spicing up the questionnaire. "If you could become intimate with anyone on board, who would it be? Have you thought about them often? Do they know?" And then one day, ship meeting, very important science conversation. Now, as you all know, we are here for a very important reason, and I think you are all forgetting that. This could be the answer for violence, for prejudice, for hate. We could be looking at peace on Earth, so I need you all to get busy. Now, I have with me your confidential questionnaires, and Jose Maria, you are unanimously the hottest guy on this boat. Edna very much wants to have sex with you. Now, Edna, Jose Maria said you were the most annoying woman he has ever met. Discuss! Unfortunately, discuss is all they did. They talked about their feelings and they worked it out. Now, that isn't to say nothing ever went down on the raft. Santiago noticed that Edna was looking interested at Charles, and maybe that would be his window into the soul. And finally, the two hooked up. And then, a couple nights later, she also hooks up with Eske. And oh, here we go. Drama's happening. This is...
War für mich nicht aus Liebe, sondern mehr aus guter Freundschaft.
And Santiago goes, "No! You're supposed to be competing! There is no free love on my sex raft!" It's been maybe 50 days, and Santiago is concerned that his crowning glory of an experiment is turning up nothing. When reading aloud everyone's private thoughts didn't ignite enough aggression in the group, he starts making things up. He'd whisper into people's ears in the dead of night, "I heard Jose Maria thinks you're a bag of..." It didn't even matter anymore if they were mad at each other or just mad in general. He started throwing buckets of water in people's faces and slinging racist attacks, because how is he supposed to solve world peace if they don't start hitting each other? The only person who ever seemed to get aggressive was Santiago himself. Besides risking the biggest move in his career, something about having to take orders from women, it just didn't sit well with him. When the captain warned him they would be passing through the Caribbean in hurricane season, Santiago tells her, "Risking our lives is part of the experiment, you know how it is. You signed the waiver. Sounds to me like you care about getting home safely more than doing proper science."
Yes, I am!
Well, there's your problem. Or when the rudder broke and the only licensed scuba diver on board tried to fix it, Santiago stepped up to say, No, this isn't a job for a woman. I'm in charge here, I'm going to do it. He nearly drowned. Surprise, surprise, the crew is finally getting a little upset, but he measures it not by reading the room, but by having them all draw trees. Aha, he thinks to himself. You can hide your sexual escapades from me, but you cannot hide your subconscious. You see? Last week you drew a tree with larger roots, but now the branches are bigger, a clear sign of growing aggression. The way he describes his volunteers in his journal over time starts to sound more and more like some sort of Byronic reflection on the human condition. They catch a small shark one day instead of a fish, so Jose Maria grabs the axe so they can eat it, and in Santiago's mind it's like a cannibalistic cabal. He struck the beast with a savage instinct from the dark recesses of the mind, and the crew gathered to feel the flesh that was still warm with life. It's mob mentality! And to think I have placed myself among the mob. Not hungry? Back! Back, foul creatures! Wicked and unholy hive mind, back! I must hide the axe, just in case. Things only got worse for poor Santiago as they enter the Caribbean Sea. He receives news from the outside world and is shocked and appalled to discover that all the newspapers are reporting about the sex on his sex raft and not his pure-hearted quest for world peace and science. His university doesn't like the association, and his job may be in genuine jeopardy, but he hears something else on the radio that gives him hope. They're sailing straight into a hurricane.
Sir, there's a hurricane bearing down on us. We'll need to take shelter in the nearest port.
No! That will contaminate my pure and pristine experiment!
You asked me to be captain, and as captain, I am not going to put our lives in jeopardy like that.
Don't worry, Maria. I am the captain now. Some of you may die, but that is a risk I'm willing to take. Everyone inside the cabin, start praying to your gods. By the grace of God, the storm just barely scrapes them and they're able to make it out alive. But it starts to dawn on them that their new captain nearly killed them all. For the first time, people start talking. Maybe if they had to, Eske could bump him overboard. And maybe everyone could get together and overdose him with Edna's medication, Agatha Christie style. Anything could happen at sea. Only a couple days later, the crew awoke to see a mountain on the water, a fully loaded freighter bearing down on them. There's no response on the radio. Manly man Santiago starts freaking out. If this thing hits them, they are dead. Period. Only Maria steps forward to give orders. She can't do much, but she can do something. They steer the raft as far away as possible and light up a signal flare and wait. And barely, just barely, the freighter turns and passes them by. The crew once again started listening to the captain that took them out of life-threatening situations. As Mexico finally appears on the horizon, the crew spends their final days cheering and singing and dancing, and Santiago lies sick in his bed, pondering life and death and how his was the only behavior that might have put himself and everyone else on the wrong side of that line. When the raft finally washes up on the shore, he holds a final meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, we've made it. And I want to say, I think, despite everything, I think this experiment was a success. Although I think maybe it says more about me than about humanity.
Santiago, that's really...
So I apologize if I offended anyone, okay? Maybe I'm not a qualified captain, but in my defense, I was never impolite about anything. Okay, adios. I hope you all bought plane tickets.